Good morning. Welcome on this foggy Sunday, January 2nd. Please stand and join me, as you are able, and join me in singing hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land. My name is Kathy Williams, and I am your worship associate today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Hudson Valley. Whether you have been with this congregation a decade or more, this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, we welcome you. We respectfully acknowledge the territory on which our church building sits as the ancestral homeland of the Munsee, Lenape, and Wappinger people. Really only one announcement that I am aware of, which is the board has decided that for at least the next 3 Sundays, we will be hoping you will tune in virtually. Very happy to see at least a dozen of you here today, and but I think with the COVID, we know what's happening anyway. So we're hoping maybe after 3 Sundays we can all gather back here, but do tune in virtually. But please, definitely look at your e-news this week for further information, please. It comes out Thursdays, definitely look at it. For the most up-to-date information, please refer to our weekly e-newsletter and check our website frequently. The website is also the place where you can find contact information for our staff, Board of Trustees, and other congregational leaders. And please join us for conversation after the service. If you're present in the sanctuary and weather permits, we can be in the parking lot or we could just chat here. If you are watching the live stream, the link for the Zoom coffee hour is found in your Saturday email reminder. If you are just recently joining us and would like to receive our weekly e-news, please email us with your name and we will make sure you are added to our e-news list. We can also answer any questions you might have. Email us at uucroton@gmail.com or fill out one of the yellow cards in the back of the pews and drop it in the collection plate. Please silence your cell phones, watches, whatever. And once again, we welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Hudson Valley. And now, I want to introduce somebody who I don't think really needs any introduction. Nora Mulligan is Vice President of the Board of Trustees currently, and a member of the Sharing and Caring Committee, as well as a worship associate. She has led a number of services in the past, both live and on Zoom, and we are very, very happy to have her leading our worship service today. Nora Mulligan.
Thank you. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Okay. These chalice lighting words thank you, are from Deborah Burrell. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Now please join me in saying our unison affirmation. The words are in your order of service. Inspired by love, our mission is to seek our true nature, connect deeply and openly, and act for justice. Let us now bear witness to the joys and sorrows experienced in our community. If you have a personally significant joy or sorrow that you are willing to share, please come up to the microphone to my left and speak it loudly and clearly so that even with your mask on, we can all hear you. The microphone will allow our friends watching virtually to hear what you are saying. I will light a candle for each, and when you are done speaking, please return to your seat. If you would prefer to only have a candle lit without speaking, just stand and let me know, and I'll light one for you.
I'd like to light a candle for my friends who were in the path of the Marshall Fire this past weekend. Their home was saved, but a lot of their neighbors lost everything. For all those people who are now without homes in very cold weather, and even those whose homes were saved are now facing frozen pipes and other disasters, please keep them in your thoughts and your prayers.
messy topic. I want to share a slight sorrow, which is, I have 2 kids living at home, going to WCC virtually, and they've sort of been at home now for almost 2 years because of the pandemic. And they have no friends that they go out with because of the pandemic. They're doing college virtually, and they don't really have a vision of the future for themselves. And it's just one of many, minor consequences of the pandemic. And I'm sure you all have no people like that in that age that are really stuck. Thank you.
I'm just going to share a joy that I'm married to a wonderful person. Tuesday is our 36th anniversary, and we both came over. We both came over here this morning, but as I arrived, I got a text from a friend who lives alone, who is very, very frantically scared that she thinks her cat has trapped not a mouse but a rat under her cabinet. So he went right off. So I appreciate that. Anybody else? Okay. We also acknowledge all the unspoken joys and sorrows held within the sanctuary of our hearts, and all those people who have yet to find a spiritual home where they can share their joys and sorrows.
I invite you now to join me in a spirit of meditation. Settle in a little more comfortably, ground yourself, close your eyes if you wish. Breathe deeply in and out. And I want you to picture who you want to be. Maybe it's the self that you thought you were going to be when you were 10. Maybe it's the self you thought you were going to be when you were in college. Maybe it's the self you thought you were going to be 3 weeks ago. Picture your ideal self. Picture the self that you would be if you had infinite power to make yourself the perfect you, the ultimate you. Hold that image in your mind. Think of who you would be, who you wanted to be, who you still want to be.
Today's reading is from The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Most of the big shore places were closed now, and there were hardly any lights except the shadowy, moving glow of a ferry boat across the Sound. And as the moon rose higher, the inessential houses began to melt away until gradually I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes, a fresh green breast of the New World. Its vanished trees, the trees that had made way for Gatsby's house, had once pandered in whispers to the last and greatest of all human dreams. For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder. And as I sat there brooding on the old unknown world, I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in that vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. And now, please join me in singing our hymn number 128, For All That Is My Life. Please rise as you are able.
Back in the beginning of December, I was driving to visit my friends in Maryland. And while I was driving, I happened to be listening to Bruce Springsteen's underrated album, Tunnel of Love. I had the CD, but hadn't listened to it often enough. It's got the excellent title song and brilliant disguise on it. But what really got to me was another song, One Step Up. As I listened to it, I was moved to tears. And I knew I'd hit on the topic I wanted to talk about in this service. If you're not familiar with the song, it's kind of a sad one. Classic Springsteen character is sitting in a bar thinking about his life. Things aren't working for him. He starts with problems with his house and his car, and then he says, "We've given each other some hard lessons lately, but we ain't learning. We're the same sad story, that's a fact. 1 step up and 2 steps back." Now right there, you can see why this feels so appropriate for a service the day after New Year's. Wasn't 2021 a case of 1 step up, 2 steps back? All down the line. But that's not the reason the song moved me, and not the real reason that I want to talk about it. After another verse, talking about how nothing seems to be working out, the character turns seriously to his marriage, thinking about the fights they've been having, and then he says, "When I look at myself, I don't see the man I wanted to be. Somewhere down the line, I slipped off track. 1 step up and 2 steps back." Here's a person looking that clearly at their own life, seeing the person they wanted to be, seeing clearly the person they are, and the vast gap between them. This spoke to me on a deep level, both because of the phase of my life that I'm in and because of the phase of the season that we're in. While it doesn't fit exactly any of Erik Erikson's formal stages of development, I really believe that at a certain point in middle age, heading perhaps towards old age, you do look back on your life. And if you're being honest with yourself, you look at what you've actually done, what you've actually been, and you remember what you intended to do and be. I know for myself, there's a big gap between those two things, and I suspect that's true for a lot of people. And of course, this is the new year, and it naturally lends itself to looking back over the past year and looking forward to the coming year, seeing where you failed yourself and others, and making resolutions to do better in specific ways over the new year. It's part of the American dream of human perfectionism. We can get better. We will get better. All we have to do is try harder, run faster, stretch out our arms further, as the reading says. But of course we know that's not true. You don't have to live long to realize that trying harder does not always get you where you want to be. Some dreams are unattainable. And even the narrator of The Great Gatsby knows that too. The words are painfully ironic, undermined by the final image of fighting against the current, borne ceaselessly back into the past. What do? How do you react when you look at the person you are and the person you wanted to be, and you realize that you've slipped off the track? Well, one thing you can do is refuse to see the difference. That's the strategy Jay Gatsby uses in the book. He's created this whole persona for himself, this rich, sophisticated man, to win the love of a woman he fell in love with when he was younger and poor and lower class. He's built up this whole life on pretty shaky foundations that we never really find out where his money comes from, just to be the person Daisy will love. Never mind that by the time Gatsby gets to this new life, she's already married to somebody else. Never mind that we, the readers and the narrator, can see that Daisy is undeserving of the love that's powering Gatsby's whole life. When he sees her again, when he tries to impress her with his new self, there's a moment when he almost realizes that it's not going to work, that he's never going to get what he yearns for. But he pushes that aside and goes on with the fake self, convincing himself that she loves him and she's going to leave her husband for him. He goes so far as to take the blame when she kills someone else, and Gatsby is murdered by the irate husband of Daisy's victim. The tragedy of the book is not that he went to all this trouble to be someone else. It's not that Daisy wasn't worthy of what he sacrificed for her. It's not even that neither Daisy nor any of the other people who took advantage of Gatsby's wealth and generosity even bothered to show up at his funeral. That's not the tragedy. The real tragedy of Gatsby is that he never allowed himself to face the truth about his life, about the difference between what he really was and what he was pretending to be. He never gave himself the chance to be an authentic person. So that technique doesn't really work, does it? Gatsby's forcibly ignoring the truth got him killed. And even if you're not going to be shot by the victim of the person you loved, living that kind of lie is a kind of death, a spiritual death. On some level, you have to know what role you're playing, what you're doing with your life. On some level, the person who dreamed a better self is still there, still watching, still aware of the gap. What do you do? Another way to deal with the pain of that realization is to turn it outward into anger. Instead of saying, you slipped off track, you can say, someone else got what you should have had, and blame that other person for it. I think we've all seen people who act that way. People who expected to have a certain kind of life and realized they weren't getting it and found other people to blame. Voting for those who stoked those resentments. Telling them, yes, those other people are preventing you from getting what you deserve, what you thought you were always going to have and be. A literary example of this is Antonio Salieri in Amadeus. As a boy, he dreamed of being a great composer, of making music that would be so beautiful, people would hear it as the very voice of God. Now, you might say this is a ridiculous ambition for anyone, that he was setting himself up for failure just wanting that, and you might be right. In a different story, he might have become a court composer, done reasonable work, had reasonable fame, and told himself that was good enough. But in this story, not only did he not get to be the great composer, whose music sounded like the very voice of God, but he actually met the person who achieved that. Salieri seems to be the only person in the movie who really understands what a genius Mozart is. Hearing Mozart's music, watching Mozart take something Salieri slaved over and turn it into something brilliant, breaks his heart. And it breaks something else, too. Salieri can't bear being shown up, even if he's the only one who sees he's being humiliated, because he's the only one who knows what he aspired to be. He sets out to destroy Mozart, to destroy him professionally, to steal his genius, to ruin him, possibly even to kill him. Salieri certainly says he intended to kill Mozart, though he wasn't directly responsible for Mozart's early death. Blaming Mozart for his own failure, his awareness of himself as a mediocrity, destroys Salieri as much as, if not more than, it does Mozart. He's certainly no closer to being the person he wanted to be as a result of what he does to Mozart than he would have been if he just allowed himself to appreciate the genius that he could hear. That's what happens when you see the gap between what you wanted to be and what you are, and you find someone else to blame. Consider our political situation, and clearly this isn't a healthy way to face your life either. There's another way, though it's much harder. At first glance, the character of Gabriel Conroy in the story The Dead, from James Joyce's Dubliners, would seem to be another of those pathetic characters who thinks highly of himself and gets shot down. He's a little pompous, a little clumsy, a little full of himself. He means well, but he can't seem to open his mouth without making a fool of himself at his aunt's party, where most of the story takes place. He offends people without trying. He misreads people. He even completely misinterprets the emotions of his beloved wife, to whom he's been married for years. She tells him about a boy who loved her in her youth, who loved her so much that he died for her. Gabriel's first reaction is, as you might imagine, pain. He sees himself as ludicrous, ridiculous, someone not capable of real love. This is the moment in One Step Up where the character looks at himself and sees the gap between who he wanted to be and who he actually was. But here's what happens to Gabriel. Instead of burying that painful insight into himself, instead of turning on his wife for having kept this from him throughout their marriage, Gabriel acknowledges that although he's never felt this himself, what his wife felt, what that young man felt, it must have been love. And he's moved to what Joyce calls generous tears. The realization that he's played a small part in his wife's emotional life, that he's played a small part in the world, that he isn't as important as he meant to be, as he thought he was, leads him to a realization of his kinship with all other people, with the living and the dead, his own overriding sense of self fading away completely. It is a beautiful moment, a moment of peace and acceptance and love and transcendence. That, I think, is what we need to do. We need to see ourselves clearly, look at the people we wanted to be, look at the people we are, and make peace with both those selves. Not run away from the insight, not hide from it, not blame someone else and lash out at them when we're really angry at ourselves and our own failures. But look clearly and honestly. Find a way to turn that painful moment into growth, to become the person we want to be now. Maybe that isn't the person we wanted to be when we were younger. But there's a person we want to be now, and maybe we can see our lives in a different way, live in a different way. As in the end of One Step Up, when he sings, "Last night I dreamed I held you in my arms. The music was never ending. We danced as the evening sky faded to black. One step up and one step back." What was a symbol of his failure, his inability to make his life work, has turned into the steps of a dance. May we dance this year. May we find a way to be the people we want to be. Blessed be. Amen. Please join me in singing our final hymn, which is in the Green Book, Teal Book, number 1074, Turn the World Around. Please rise in body and spirit. Oh, when we do this, we're going to do it as written, okay? Follow Kathy, follow me. You'll know where you're going.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life, so is life. Oh, so is life, so is life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight, turn the world around. Heart is out the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. Oh, so is life, so is life. Oh, so is life, so is life.
Well, each week we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in a spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken in this community. And today's offering will also be shared with Midnight Run. Please refer to our e-newsletter or website for more information. You can make your donation in several ways. If present in the sanctuary, you may give cash or a check in the offering plate as it comes by. You may also scan the QR code in your order of service. From your homes, you can make your donation via credit card or PayPal using the links provided in the e-newsletter, and please remember to give a little extra to compensate for the 3% surcharge. Or, if you prefer, you can always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. How lucky are we to have a pianist who can play Bruce Springsteen on a moment's fly. Please, thank you, Josephine. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. The words are in your order of service. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. And now please join me in extinguishing the chalice. The words are also found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
From arrogance, pompousness, and from thinking ourselves more important than we are, may some saving sense of humor liberate us. For allowing ourselves to ridicule the faith of others, may we be forgiven. For making war and calling it peace, special privilege and calling it justice, indifference and calling it tolerance, pollution and calling it progress, may we be cured. For telling ourselves and others that evil is inevitable and good is impossible, may we stand corrected. God of our mixed up, tragic, aspiring, doubting, and insurgent lives, help us to be as good in our hearts as we have always wanted to be. Amen.
No.